What's going on, everybody? My name is Linwood. Thank y'all so much for being here. I hope you guys are excited because I am. Why? Because this next hour is so jam-packed full of hope, positivity, optimism, gratitude, mental toughness, and an attitude check, baby. So if I were you, I'd get ready for it by pulling up a chair, pulling up a couple of shots, letting your hair down, kicking your shoes off, but just relax because this will be the best hour that you have received, and I'm excited for it. Let's go!
Joseph Jaffe. Why does that name sound so suspiciously familiar? Maybe because your secret screen name is Not Famous for You. What do you mean by not famous for you, Joseph? Chris Hansen here of Hansen versus Predators. To catch a predator and have a seat with Chris Hansen. Now, Joseph Jaffe, I'm going to need you to have a seat right over there. I see some suspicious activity. Something about a television show, doing interviews, 200 guests, something like that. But Joseph, you are not famous. And the people on your show, well, they're not infamous like my shows. But remember, Jaffe is not famous. So let's keep it that way. I'll be watching and listening. Behave.
There was one guy I was dealing with getting a little bit pissy over the kid interrupting the call thing, and I'm like,
Cheery Orion!
appreciate it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, please. Yeah.
My bad. Please continue. It's very alliterative.
They are going to be the ones powering the experiences that every customer has.
Preference has power. I'm pretty sure Cato would say to me when I do every show, stop.
I think he would.
Those peeps are popping. Wait till you get the invoice.
Here. I have a question. When's the last time you danced? When's the last time you laughed?
Right now. I don't want to dance with you.
When's the last time you flew a kite?
Toasted Oreo.
Look at you. You are insane.
How did I do that?
You're
How did I do that?
insane. You're insane.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome. It is Tuesday. It is June 8th. It is time for a little bit of Not Famous. Joseph Jaffe is not famous, but my next guests, plural, are very famous, and more about them soon. I hope you are well. I hope you had a good day. I hope life is treating you productively, Mr. Bob Farnham. Did somebody say productivity? Sure, you just did. It is a time to be productive, maybe passively. Sit back, relax, have a couple of shots. Have a glass of wine. Why not? Cheers to you. Cheers to your health. Cheers to your well-being. Because today is National Best Friends Day, and you, my friends, you are my best friends in the whole world. I am nothing without you. Absolutely, and I mean that. So let's get on with the show. It is 14 days to open heart surgery. And again, why am I sounding so excited? I'm not excited at all, but I am excited about the fact that even though Bitcoin is down, your generosity is up. Just under $16,000 raised to support me, support the show, and support the Mitral Foundation. So thank you, everybody. And if you want to know how you can contribute, all you have to do is go to rally.io/creator/Jaffe and find out how you can support the show and how the show can support you. And that's very important because every single one of these opportunities will result in you getting a cameo, a walk-on role, sitting backstage, sponsoring the show, hosting the show, or even having your own show as well. Well, let's get on with the show. Today and earlier, I sat down with Rahaf Harfoush. You're going to see that amazing interview coming up shortly. Tomorrow, Sean Nason. And then Margot Bloomstein or Bloomstein. I still have to find out if it's like a young Frankenstein or young Frankenstein. Frau Blucher. You know the drill. You know the routine. Rahaf was just amazing. She is just ridiculously smart And I cannot wait to actually watch that interview again. That's how good it was. And right after Rahaf, you're going to meet Christopher Michael. He's the founder of 310 Brown Street Publishing, author of 4 books, and Slam Master for Austin Neo Soul. So he is coming up very soon. Let's say happy birthday to Dory Koenig, to Alan Cohen, Jocelyn Monet, Tracy Diamond, and Susan Lichtenstein or Lichtenstein. Again, we just cannot decide whether we are Steen or Stein today. And you know what? We don't need to worry about it because we're just moving forward. All systems go with a soliloquy that is entitled, "Hey, why don't you take a bath?" Today, Rahaf Harfouche and I had an amazing conversation about differences, contradictions, duality, FOMO, addiction, notifications, toxic positivity, intentional reframing, and more. In other words, it was your garden variety rendition of an anthropologist and a talk show host walk into a stream. With all this stimulating conversation, I can't stop thinking about Rahaf's very simple litmus test that pretty much applies to all of life, although we used it with a distinct technology bent. The question she asks after every interaction or digital encounter is this: how did it make me feel? Does it make you feel better or worse about yourself? Do you feel emotionally, spiritually, or mentally richer or poorer as a direct result of investing your most precious resource, time? I have a less elegant and yet similar technique that I initially used in Clubhouse rooms. When I was done in the room, did I feel like I needed to take a bath? It became my personal rubric to determine which rooms I chose to spend time in or avoid, how dirty I felt. It didn't take too much sleuthing to determine which moderators were shepherds, sheep, or wolves in sheep's clothing, or perhaps I should say wolf times lion, little insider joke. It's amazing how easily people reveal and ultimately betray themselves. It generally comes down to a foundational level of respect and empathy for people in a room or on a stage. People that wait over an hour to speak and then they're given an arbitrary time limit of 30 seconds to make their pitch or these days shoot their shot? I don't think so. I hope that every guest on my show feels like it was worth their time. I hope they feel good, no, great about themselves in the process. It's not gratuitous when I say they're famous. They are, and I want them to know that. Everyone is interesting, no, fascinating, and everyone has a story. Now, my calling is to help uncover it, celebrate it, and elevate it. And if I can't or I don't, well, then that's on me. In a world where we are controlled by technology, enslaved by notifications, hypnotized by streaks, and duped by gratification, instant gratification, it's worth noting that we still have control of our taps, clicks, and ultimately choices if and only if we realize that FOMO, aka fear of missing out, does not apply to the artificially intelligent or virtual facade of social media, but indeed to the very real reality of life. And now it's time for Rahaf Harfouche. I am super excited to have real royalty in the studio today. I may not be famous, but let me tell you, my next guest, Rahaf Harfouche, is very famous. Let me tell you a little bit about her. Rahaf Harfouche is a strategist, digital anthropologist, and New York Times best-selling author who focuses on the intersections of emerging technology, innovation, and digital culture. She's the executive director of the Red Thread Institute of Digital Culture. She teaches innovation and emerging business models at Sciences Po, I hope I got that right, School of Management and Innovation in Paris. Formerly, Rahaf was the Associate Director of the Technology Pioneer Program at the World Economic Forum in Geneva. For some reason, though, she decided that she wasn't going to be live at 9. It might be because that would have been about 3 o'clock in the morning, so she's absolutely forgiven. But as an extra treat, here is the first minute of one of her amazing TED Talks, and then we will welcome her on the show.
It's no secret that the climate crisis is continuing to worsen. And to be honest, human beings aren't doing that much better either. In 2019, the World Health Organization declared burnout as an occupational phenomenon characterized by feelings of energy depletion and exhaustion. But what if these two events have more in common than we think? Many of the problems we're facing on the environmental front are driven by this fundamental miscalculation, the belief that we have an unlimited and never-ending supply of resources. But isn't that what burnout is? Isn't it just the mismanagement of our own energy, thinking that we can push ourselves to our limits with abandon without any consequences? As I started to see the similarities between how we treat the planet and how we approach our own productivity, I started to wonder, how can we prioritize sustainability in our businesses when we don't prioritize it in ourselves?
Love it. A little bit of a sneak peek for that wonderful TEDx talk. Rahaf, welcome to the show. This has been a moment that I've been anticipating and looking forward to for a long time.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's so great to be here.
So David Libby is here. He is present and accounted for. And Tom Morris says, I actually made it. I did my 6.5 minutes of philosophy for the Global Ethics Panel and got here in time. There's something funny about that, right, Rahaf? The Global Ethics Panel, could they only handle 6.5 minutes of philosophy?
It sounds about right. It sounds about right to me, Tom.
They might have. Tom is already saying that short video is a great cautionary tale about not getting the abundance mindset wrong. Tom, you're going to love Rahaf big time. Rahaf, there is so much to talk about. But first of all, you are number 265. I'm sure there is something very significant about that number. You are a digital anthropologist and a best-selling author. And I don't normally get into the quote of the episode, but I wanted to do that off the bat with you because this is the quote that I found for you. The purpose of anthropology is to make the world safe for human differences. And I thought I just wanted you to talk a little bit about your craft and how you see not just anthropology but digital anthropology, your role and your unique perspective of how you approach what you do. And I will just add one extra little bit of stimulus, which is I notice how you are really, really good at exposing and identifying contradictions and then looking to resolve those contradictions. We'll get to that a little bit later when we talk about your wonderful book, Hustle and Float, about kind of how we seemingly live our lives going through all these contradictory forces and tensions. And I guess the goal is to figure out, that's probably Freudian, how to make sense of it all and reconcile. So how do you see this quote? How do you see anthropology?
I mean, for me, what I really love about digital anthropology is how much of life, how much of personal and private lives people are willing to share. So it gives you access to people's thoughts and their experiences in a way that we wouldn't get in the real world. And so it's, for me, I use it as a way to understand the contradictions that exist within ourselves, and also to never jump to conclusions in categorizing one group of people or another. So one of my favorite things, and I think my love for digital anthropology just really grew from my penchant of lurking online. And, you can go into these communities or chats, or you can go into all of these different places online, and you can just see how communities evolve. So I have been embedded inside digital communities where people believe the absolute opposite of what I believe or how I see the world. And over time, because of this exposure, I've been able to find a sense of commonality, of a sense of humanity. So for me, I believe that digital anthropology is a really wonderful way to find what we have in common, to find that even though we have different extremes and different beliefs and different things, that there are some things about the human experience that remain fundamentally the same. You know, the desire to be seen, the desire to be loved, the desire to be recognized, the desire to belong, and how those forces interplay with technology. It's been an ongoing fascination.
I totally love that. And you must find it obviously very hard to lurk when it comes to Clubhouse, because, you know, you've become you are a force, an amazing voice, an amazing force in Clubhouse. But with 148,000 followers, it's very hard to lurk. It's very hard to observe. It's very hard to, you know, be that fly on the wall. And I know that's something actually Clubhouse are working on now, right? Which is like a kind of a silent mode or a dark mode that allows us actually to listen. I mean, it's so ironic that we can't actually just be passive and absorb and learn, that we have to always be the teachers and the sellers on Clubhouse. I would love for you to talk about, in particular, just from an anthropological standpoint, what have you learned about humanity and about innovation? And what have you learned from this ridiculously, you know, unprecedented bubble that is Clubhouse existing in a global Patricia? We'll come back to that later and explain what that means.
You know, it's fascinating because it was such a collision of perfect timing. People were at home, they were under lockdown, there wasn't much to do, people were feeling isolated. So the rise of this little social audio app just was so serendipitous. It was such perfect timing. I got onto Clubhouse last July, so really at the height of the global lockdown, and it was a saving grace of that summer to suddenly find groups of people to chat with. And at that time, when I first got onto the site, there were only about, I think maybe like a couple thousand people. So it was this very much small vibe. For people that use the app now, you know, you open it up now, you see like rows and rows and rows of rooms and things going on. When I was using it, there was like 3 rooms. Sometimes in Europe, there would be no rooms. And so over the course of the summer, it became almost like a hangout spot where groups of us would just get to know each other. And I just think it's, again, it shows how different people just want to be connected. I was in the same room developing these friendships, talking about very vulnerable topics, very personal topics with people that I'd never met, or even better, people that I hadn't spoken to in years that I suddenly serendipitously crossed. And so I thought it was like such a wonderful opportunity in terms of the technology. What then became fascinating was as it scaled, you started to see the differences as, you know, as what I call the why we can't have nice things, because as it scales, as with any technology, you'll always have people that want to exploit and manipulate and, use the technology for their own gain. So we started to see the rise of grifters and scammers. We started to see the rise of people just selling never-ending, you know, how to be a billionaire, how to make money instantly, how to get rich quick. We started seeing all of these emerging communities colliding together. And it was just really fascinating to see how all of these dynamics played out in audio. So you had people that were using the power of their voice charismatically, convincingly, with intent, you know, to set up arguments or with their worldview, even if their worldview was filled with misinformation or filled with things that were not, you know, super great to have online. But then to your point, what was even more interesting was, even though it's a social audio, even though it's about talking and speaking and listening, there were a lot of different things that happened as you navigated the app. So as you mentioned, I have some followers online, but then it became that anytime I entered a room, I was like, in a way, endorsing the room. Or anytime I was on stage, if I got invited to a stage or if I was a part of a conversation, my presence acted as a social credibility, as endorsement of that space. And so for me, as a digital anthropologist that loves to poke in places, that likes to spend time listening to people, you know, maybe listening to some conspiracy theories, maybe listening to some Patricia propaganda. I know you'll explain what Patricia means later, but I couldn't do that anymore because it was seen as, oh, well, Rahaf's in here, I'm going to come in here and listen. And it was notifying everybody that followed me. So I was bringing people into conversations that weren't actually adding value to the community. So it's just been really interesting to see the power of voice, the power of people to connect, and also all the different ways that people use the platform to adapt in a way that the platform was never intended.
You know, I love that concept. Why it almost feels like, I don't know if it's a haiku or if it's a book, why we can't have nice things. You know, the inevitability, the rise of the grifters. But it's there's something beautiful about this idea, and yet there is something inevitable, right? It's the same thing. Like I call it a proof of life, which is the scammers, the direct marketers, you know, porn, gambling, if they don't arrive to something that is new and bright and shiny, you know, there's something wrong with it. And then hopefully, not always, they get forced out. But something else has happened, I think, from just a human behavior standpoint, which is whether people spoke about it as bullying but it really just comes down to the same thing, which is we're all insecure. We all just want to be validated. We all just want to be appreciated. We all want to be fit in, and we all want somebody to say, you know, gosh darn it, you know, you're important, and that was awesome, and you're awesome.
Well, you know, it's about what you said about, it's not necessarily contradictions. I think it's about dualities. It's the duality of the human experience, and technology is just a mirror that amplifies all of the best aspects about ourselves and all of the worst aspects about ourselves. Or so I always call it like everything is awesome, everything is terrible at the same time. And so it's one of those things where you could go on Clubhouse and you could find generosity, authenticity, integrity. You can find people who are devoting time to really adding value to people, you know, and creating wonderful content, artists and poets and writers. But you could also find manipulation and lies and exploitation and all of those things. And so for me, it's not one or the other. It's always one and the other, because that is the duality of the human experience. Just as every person has the dark side and the light side and their good and their bad qualities, it is the sum, the totality of that, which is why I always find it so funny when people try to shove technology into one category, like, oh, it's going to be great or it's going to be terrible. It's like, no, it's going to be both, because we are both. And it is just a reflection of our flaws and our hopes and our aspirations that get literally codified into these technological infrastructure tools.
Well, I feel like we need to come clean and explain to people what a global Patricia is. But Tom adds, that's interesting how Rahaf's celebrity on Clubhouse has had inhibiting consequences. Beyonce walks into a bar. No, isn't that Buddha walks into a bar? Beyonce walks into Burger King, Buddha walks into a bar. And he adds, I like the use of duality first focused on by Pascal, with his conceptions of the greatness and wretchedness of man were like gods, but can be killed by a vapor. Truer words have never been spoken.
I love that you have a philosopher in the house. I think you could even refer to social media as almost maybe more like Hume-esque in terms of the sums of the whole that create the identity, right? So
he puts the Hume in humanity. Or maybe he puts the humidity into humanity. We don't know with him.
Not quite sure.
But now we go, the show is like a manic depressive existence. We go from extreme serious and intense to frivolous and fun facts about Rahaf Harfouche. These are the things that people really want. This is the Beyonce part of the show, where we learn things about you that maybe people knew and maybe they didn't. And I'm definitely not going to get this right, Rahaf. But apparently, how the hell do I am obsessed with Ching Chia. No, I'm sure that's wrong.
I think it's Xian Xia. But I didn't say it there. I probably didn't say it.
I know
right.
what Xian Xia is, Chinese dramas, but no one knew that you actually were in one. So
I mean, I love that. I'm going to make that the background of my phone. I hope you send me that image. It's phenomenal.
Damn straight I'm going to. So we found out this about you. And then we found out these are things that I wish my unbelievable Photoshop skills would be able to improve on it. But I couldn't. And this is where I think maybe Patricia may come into it, which is you collect words that don't exist in English. So my question to you, like a chair drobe. By the way, I have a chair drobe. Chair drobe defined as piling clothes on a chair in place of a closet or dresser. Also see floor drobe. That sounds like my daughter's floor. Is this what you mean by collecting words?
Sort of. I collect words in different languages that means very specific things that don't exist in English. So there's like a variety of like Japanese words and German words and French words that just are very, very specific. There's a word in Japanese. I don't know how to say it, so I'm not gonna say it, but there's a word in Japanese where it's this one word, but essentially it represents when somebody offers to do a favor for you. Okay. So they're offering to do you a favor. You say, no, thank you. They insist on doing the favor anyway, but they mess it up in somehow causing you a great deal of inconvenience, but you are bound by social niceties to still have to thank them. So the Japanese have a word for that, just like one word, which I just thought was like, as a writer, I just love that precision.
Okay, that's like ridiculously awesome because the setup itself is like a short story, and the punchline is just one word. So it's kind of like almost like it's a backhanded compliment, or it's a thank you, but with beautiful little undertones of maybe sarcasm. Fantastic. Now, this is where we basically say. So I normally tell my guests there are some naughty words that we don't say on this show. For example, living through a global, and then ... And then Rahaf gave me this amazing little hack. Why don't you share that with our audience?
It started off as a joke on TikTok, but essentially instead of saying that word, you just replace it with another similar syllable P word. So my friends and I have been talking about surviving a global panini, about getting through a Patricia, about what's going to happen, like that's kind of the gist of it. So we're just constantly trying to find new and fun words to replace that with, like trying to get through a petroleum. Like it just has become an ongoing joke. And so I was just saying that if you can't say that, then we should really be talking about navigating a global Patricia, because it's really serious.
Yeah, and I mean, I could have called this Cabana TV or Carrot TV. There was so many options, so little time. But we netted out on the truest words ever been spoken there. Joseph Jaffe is not famous, but my next guest is. But I have to ask you, because there's one more thing about you, which is you love spoilers. So I have to ask you, how does this experiment of Joseph Jaffe is not famous end? Do I ever become famous, or am I continuously lost, searching endlessly? It's my Don Quixote story, my tragedy of trying to become famous but never succeeding.
I think you'll find that the real fame, the real treasure, was the friendships you made along the way.
That beautiful, beautiful words, and I hope that you will become one of them, because I've really been, just so admiring and respecting your work and your contributions from afar. I would say major success if we build our friendships. And by the way, Tom, Glenn says famous to the people who like you. Of course, I agree. Tom says Joseph kills the whale and we boat off into the sunset.
We're not killing whales in 2021, Tom.
I think he means figuratively.
I know.
That would be a mobile deck. I don't know, but enough about that. And now for something completely different. So let's get into some of the things that I mean, there's so many things to talk about. And one of the things that really piqued my interest is that you said you're working on new research around the concept of humane productivity. So I would love for you to define what is humane productivity and talk a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, seeing the context of global burnout on the rise, of people struggling at work, of the rise of overwork, it's just, from a systemic perspective, I was like, there needs to be a better way to approach how we work, especially for knowledge workers, especially for creatives, for people that are using their brains. There has to be a way that we could design how we work, how we invest our attention and our time in a sustainable way in the long term. Like, what if at the end of the week, I didn't feel depleted? What if I felt rejuvenated and replenished and refreshed? What about, how would it change the way that I approach my calendar, my meetings, my to-do list, if instead of constantly pulling from my energetic resources nonstop, I was actually investing them in different ways? And so I'm really focused on how can we give alternatives, because what you'll see and what I researched in my first book, Hustle and Float, was that the majority of performance systems, the majority of tools that we use as productive creatives, as knowledge workers, were based on systems of work and ideologies of productivity that were never designed for us and that are actually getting in the way of our ability to produce our best possible intellectual work. So we've been shoved into a system that doesn't make sense, and I am now committed on creating a different system that allows us to actually concentrate on work that we really like to do without sacrificing our physical or emotional or mental well-being.
Well, you actually said in the book, our culture has become obsessed with hustling. We've forgotten how to float. Another of these interesting contradictions, or even attempts to find a duality, because and I struggle with that word hustle. Seth Godin hates it. Most people hate it. The only time I hate it, the only time that I use it personally is because it's too close to the word hustler for me. But I do love the idea of a side hustle becoming a main hustle. I like the concept of side hustle for some reason. But how do you think? Well, there are two examples. I mean, there are two conversations. One is about recognizing that these workplace practices, these productivity practices, these creativity practices are anything but. Can you give a couple of examples maybe of what some of these points of friction and inefficiencies are in the workplace?
Sure. So the modern day workplace has been based on an industrial revolution leftover legacy system, whereby we used to measure productivity in terms of nonstop output, right? You're at the assembly line and you're just there for your shift and you're constantly producing, so that at the end of your shift, your boss could walk by and very clearly see, based on the number of widgets that you created, whether or not you were productive. So this idea of continuous output, of nonstop productivity, has been baked into the ways that we manage our productivity today. The problem, the point of friction, is that creativity or high cognitive tasks, problem solving, being inspired, being creative, they all require you to step back, and they require you to have undistracted chunks of time where you can just think about stuff. When you ask people where they get their best ideas, they'll say, oh, like on my commute home from work, in the shower, while I'm walking my dog, while I'm out running. Nobody says I get my best ideas staring at my screen for 10 hours a day. Mm-hmm. And yet we have this expectation that if we're not constantly busy, if we're not filling our time with something productive, not just our professional time, by the way, our personal time, if our weekends aren't productive, then that's a waste of time. But ironically, having a period of time where you don't do anything, where you just stare at the ceiling, or you are meditating, or you're walking, or you're not actively doing something productive, is exactly what you need for your brain to kick into gear and to solve those problems. So you have this friction where you have a culture that glorifies nonstop busyness as a badge of honor, as a way to say, look, like I'm so successful because I hustle nonstop. And then you have a neurological and psychological process of how our brain actually works that requires things like daydreaming and boredom and unstructured, undistracted time to actually come up with stuff. So then you see, not only is it the work culture, you also have the technological context of nonstop notifications and nonstop interruptions and emails and social media. Like, people are never bored. They're never unstimulated. They're constantly moving from one productive thing to another. And then they wonder why they're struggling. They're wondering why it takes them longer to come up with ideas, or they're spending so much time on creative work. Because at the time when they hit that block, instead of doing the best thing, which is get up, go take a walk, go hang out, what they're actually doing is saying, oh, I'm just going to push through, because it's become like an endurance sport.
I'm sorry. I'll be 1 second. Apparently, I'm live with Rahaf right now. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. This is the point, right? This is the point, that we are constantly on our phones. and glued to these things, and it is the damn notification. It's exactly what you said. The notification is the enemy. It is the ultimate enemy. And you know, I'm always fascinated, Rahaf. Like, I'm sure we probably do it as well because we're just human. That when someone picks up a phone at a dining room table or a restaurant table, everyone picks up the phone. It's like unbelievable that we don't have the ability just to say, well, you picked up the phone, something was important, etc. I'm okay to be in the moment. I'm okay to smell, to see, to hear, to take this in, to just stare at you across the table. But I think that is the beginning of the solution, which is to figure out how to handle notifications.
It's just, you have to also understand it's their addictions. The stimulations, the notification act as micro stimulations that actually cause your brain to produce dopamine and you know, endorphins. And so it's not just so simple anymore to say, I'm just going to turn off notifications. It's like, it's become an addiction, and the stimulation is nonstop. Our brains are so hyperactive all of the time. Most people sleep with their phones next to their bed. So from the minute they wake up to the minute they go to sleep, they're constantly having content piped into their brain. They're listening to a podcast, they're watching YouTube, they're on Netflix, they're on social media, they're infinite scrolling, they're in emails, they're checking the news. So there's never a point in time anymore, unless you're super intentional about it, where you can get away from all of that noise, where you can get away and just give your brain just 15 minutes of quiet. And this is what I find really fascinating, because in a world that is demanding more innovative thinkers, more creative thinkers, more solutions, more out of the box approaches, we are hampering and hindering ourselves by making it almost impossible for us to create those good quality solutions, because we cannot not be on our phones and we can't not be stimulated anymore. We have to constantly be doing something or reading something or consuming something endlessly as a part of this like addictive technological ecosystem we find ourselves in.
David Libby says, we're Pavlov's dog, indeed. And then, of course, just to add insight, and I'm glad you mentioned that, Rahaf, which is, it's not just, you know, it's just not the notifications themselves, but it is these principles, these psychological principles of addiction. And then there's FOMO, you know, that even by switching it off, suddenly you're worried about what you're missing, or what you're missing out on, or what you could have been experiencing. And it's just so counterproductive and just downright harmful. Let's talk about the solution. How do we fix things? How do we fix ourselves? How do we heal? And that was something I know you wanted to talk about as well, which is, you know, how you're taking your knowledge on trauma, health, and specifically this body-mind connection. So how do we heal? What have you learned during, in particular, this Patricia-enabled period of time that can be part of the, you know, solution as we get back to work, whatever that looks like?
I've learned that the human mind is an incredible thing, that we don't really understand how to use it. I've learned that we've been using work and social media as coping mechanisms to not feel or not sit with our emotions. We have a social media culture of toxic positivity where everything is great all the time. And so I think, like, as a society, we haven't quite learned how to sit with discomfort, how to sit with silence, how to sit with ourselves. So how can we expect to heal if we don't create the space to just acknowledge some of those things? For me, I've learned to be very intentional with my social media. I'm really not on it that often. I just don't care anymore in terms of like if it's adding value or not. For me, it's like right now, as I'm recovering, I'm going through some health stuff. It's like the most important thing is healing, and the body is incredibly self-healing, and the mind can do incredible things, but not when it's distracted, not when it's feeling FOMO, not when it's being constantly pulled, not when the attention is unfocused, not when you're consuming garbage like intellectual junk food that's just not adding anything to you. So, and I want to be clear here, because I think technology is quite powerful. As I said, yes, it can be terrible, but it's also awesome. So I have framed my experience of social media with intentionality. And I asked myself a very simple question. How does me engaging with this particular platform make me feel? If it doesn't make me feel, educate, like I'm learning something, like I'm connected, like I'm happy, I'm not on it. And for Clubhouse, for example, I used to spend so much time in different rooms, and I was like, why am I in this room? Why am I listening to this random, like when I'm not working? When I'm working, it's different. But when I'm not working, it's like, why am I spending time listening to some random person share an opinion about something if it's not actually adding value? So it starts with intentionality. And then the second thing is it really has to go, you really have to create space. We don't have enough quiet space for our minds to actually be. And what's really funny is we're so obsessed with work, outward work, as a way to protect ourselves, as a way to self-validate, as a way to prove our importance to society. But the real work, the hard work, who am I without my job? Who am I without this technology? Who am I? Where do my ideals of work come from? Where do my notions of success come from? What are my fears? What do I not want to feel? Like, all of the real deep work that we do on ourselves is not as important as all of these outward metrics of success. And so I think it's about creating a context or an ecosystem of tools where you feel good when you use them, and then remembering and grounding yourself and giving your brain the space to think about everything you're learning, think about everything you're consuming, and also to take some time to unpackage beliefs that you might not even know that you had. And that was the biggest learning. The biggest learning over this, Patricia, was that we carry so many beliefs about ourselves, about the world, about what we can do, about what we can't do, that we never question, because they're just like there. They feel true to us. And then once you start unraveling those, you're like, oh, those beliefs aren't actually true and they don't serve me anymore. But you can't get to that. You can't break free of propaganda culture. You can't break free of FOMO. You can't move forward if you don't understand the need it's filling within you. So if you need FOMO because you need to feel included, because you need to feel validated, because, versus having self-confidence in yourself to just be alone, then no amount of reflection is ever going to, no amount of technology is ever going to fix that. And so it's really about going to the root. And I would say, not to get super philosophical, but I would say that the basic human wound in general is that nobody feels like they're good enough. So everybody in their own way has been wounded by some sort of childhood experience that has made them believe that they're not good enough. And then we spend our entire lives, these like adult puppets, being puppeted by these like wounded inner children, trying to prove that we are, without ever going deep and without ever saying, like, I am actually worthy, and I don't need a LinkedIn profile, and I don't need followers, and I don't need these things to feel good about who I am. And that's the work that nobody really wants to do because it's uncomfortable. And it's much easier to just infinitely scroll and to, wonder what people are doing without you on social media than it is to say, like, I'm just going to really reflect on creating good anchors for myself.
I mean, this to me was not just a TEDx, but a masterclass. Rahaf, I could listen to you. I almost forgot that I was part of this, and I didn't want to be. I just wanted to hear you talk. It was in a way it stopped short of being a rant, because a rant is a negative thing. This was beautiful. This was like poetry. And sorry, Glenn, you're going to have to deal with your FOMO, JJ, because I'm looking forward to taking my 5-week hiatus. And Rahaf, I've been thinking about like being on the hospital bed and thinking the first thing in my mind was, the first night I'll be spending in the ICU, thinking, well, I have my phone with me, and what am I going to do just sitting there for hours upon hours on end? What am I going to do with myself? And I'm actually kind of looking forward to this period of time to unplug, to, digest, to, something I jotted down as you were talking, intentional reframing. I basically reframed your reframe, but that's what it is. It's reframing our priorities with intentionality. And I think if we can do that, we can absolutely come out on the other side. And by the way, what you said was so beautiful, this concept of just how does it make you feel? I started saying that as well with some of the rooms. Do you feel like $1 million, or do you feel like you need to take a bath because you feel dirty? Well, guess what? If you feel dirty, don't go back there because it's not good for you. I want to ask you one final question in the few moments we have left, which is, when you think about the power of body-mind connection, can we manifest positive outcomes? Because if we are moving away from an output-based society based on timesheets and hourly wages and compensation that is tied back to time and output of widgets, and we move to something that I would call higher value outcomes, can we succeed? Can we get to outcomes versus outputs? And from a mind-body standpoint, can we manifest these positive outcomes, and in doing so, heal ourselves, heal each other, and heal society?
I mean, I think so. What is so dangerous about not being intentional? What is so dangerous about just blindly consuming or just, scrolling mindlessly is that the things that you read and the things that you see, they go right into your brain, and then they form your worldview. They form your emotional baseline. They form what you believe is possible. And if you are not intentional, if you're not careful, then you're not in control of what those narratives are. And I'm reading the most fascinating literature about the mind-body connection. I'm in the middle of a book now called Mind Over Medicine, that's really talking about what happens to a brain that is constantly feeling fear and doubt and worry and anxiety and stress, which is the big one, compared to a brain that feels gratitude and love and joy. And it has a tangible impact on your nervous system, on your immune system, on your heart, on everything. And it's like the outlook of patient recovery just goes off the charts when you have people that are putting these mental practices into place. So for me, it's like your thoughts, that machine that's in your brain that is constantly broadcasting. It's like, what is it broadcasting? If you're constantly broadcasting doubt and negativity and fear and worry, and again, not saying that those things don't have value, if you're doing it without really recognizing it, if you're not in tune with it, then that's your entire life. And again, as the book said, your life now is essentially the sum of everything that you thought was possible in the past, right? So if you want to have a different future, I believe you really have to start with the mind. And people are just giving their most precious resource, which is their attention and their time. We have such a limited time here on earth, and we're giving these precious resources to what? To like some dude you met at a conference 14 years ago, somebody from like high school you haven't spoken to that's now posting like weird Patricia memes. Like, this is not a good investment of your time. So I always think about, what is the return on investment? What is the return on, what's the return on investment in terms of what I'm consuming? And is it making me more grateful, more happy, more calm, more peaceful, or is it just making me sicker? So I really believe that. And, I know you're going through some health stuff, and, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry to hear that. But like this idea of going in with, what would it take for you to go into that ICU feeling supported, loved, grateful, optimistic, hopeful? What would it take for you to go in feeling that way? And then I would do everything that I could to make sure that I walked into that room feeling like the most grateful person, the happiest person in the world, because like there's so few things that you can control, and your mind is one of the most powerful ones.
Well, I'm fortunate enough to be surrounded by so much positivity, not toxic positivity, but hope, positivity, and optimism. I can also reveal that we will be live streaming the surgery, and we do have a sponsor. Just kidding.
I was like, oh my God.
That would be like, that would be the cricket one as well. It was beautiful. And I think there's the book, maybe if I got it right, The Giving Tree, which is ultimately everything is either a deposit or a withdrawal. And, and using your beautiful litmus test of how it made you feel, at the end of the day and at the end of our lives, when we take stock, hopefully we don't run out of time, and we don't run out of, there is nothing worse than ending up with a bank balance, quite literally and figuratively, that has an abundance of whatever we want to measure it with, that we could have actually used for better and for good and to share and to give and to uplift, etc. You have uplifted me, Rahaf. Tom will get the last word from our gallery. He said, if I ever see Rahaf in Burger King, I'll just have to go over and talk philosophy with her and get her to sign a napkin and then ask, why are we here? I mean, in Burger King, as opposed to Chick-fil-A. I know, I get it. You can find out more about Rahaf. I will put up all her details again. But please go and buy Hustle and Float. I've put the link below for you. And you can follow her on Twitter, on Instagram, join her in a Clubhouse, connect with her on LinkedIn. Go check out that amazing TED Talk. And if you need more, then you should be purchasing the Harfouche. We're still figuring it out, Rahaf. We won't even go down that rabbit hole today. We'll just leave it at that. Thank you so much for coming in. It was just a real treat for me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Damn, and damn, I was on mute again. This is what happens every time. I make the same damn rookie mistake every single time. I was just saying, I was watching it back the second time, and I got to say, like, when I'm in the moment, sometimes I'm hard on myself. I'm a perfectionist, and I think to myself, could I have done better? And then looking back, I realized that was a really awesome interview. And you know what else is awesome? Or who else is awesome? Christopher Michael is awesome. And he is the creative creator that is going to be performing. Let me tell you a little bit about him. Christopher Michael has been rocking Texas mics for 20 years, former president of Poetry Slam Inc., Texas Poet Laureate nominee. I mean, that's incredible. National Poetry Slam finalist. He has shared stages with Angie Stone and Eric Benet. He's the founder of 310 Brown Street Publishing, author of 3 books, and slam master for Austin Neo Soul. You can check out his work on www.mrmichael310.com, 310brownstreet.com, or his album Nuclear Orange RFTG on iTunes, Spotify, and Tidal. We are very grateful to have him in the studio. Christopher, welcome to the show.
Woody-hoo!
Woody-hoo! How was, I mean, that was pretty power interview, I gotta say.
That was pretty good. That was pretty good. I was really, it really had me hearkening back to how bad the global piranha has been.
Oh, well played, sir. You know, you got the joke as well. I know it's the gift that keeps on giving.
Yes.
I'm thrilled to have you in with us today, and we are super live at the moment at 9:53 p.m. just to prove to you, because I'm wearing the same clothes. You know, we're resorting to old school Jedi mind tricks.
I wear the same thing all the time.
Yeah, Christopher, you are. I like the coordination. We got the memo. You are going to be performing Ghetto in the Coke Can from your book Demigod, and then Dear Poet from your latest release, A Black Type Poems. I'm going to give you the floor, let you take it away, and then I will be back in between with a couple of questions, and I'm excited just to sit back, and I will mute myself, and no doubt I will forget to unmute again because that's just what I do.
Let's go. Hey, we learning, and once you get it right, then you'll be famous.
I mean, apparently I will then never be famous because I don't know if I'll ever get it right. But please take it away. I'm excited to watch you.
If we can hear the sound of the ocean in a seashell, can we hear the sound of the ghetto in a Coke can? From the ocean, do we hear the cries of a people ghosted into nothing, choosing the waters of triangular trade over being traded on the auction block? From the ghetto, Do we then hear the moans of a people left behind with empty hands, annihilated identity, castrated culture, severed tongues, fighting for a rung or bootstrap just to pull themselves up by? No, there is no ocean and seashell, but it does resonate an ensemble of ambient air, a discarded thing, pulling in the vibrations of a world around it, giving the ear something to dance to, the mind something to think about. Thought becomes desire, turn action, creation, brushstroke becomes painted picture, then pen on page, then poem. We are people, powerful enough to turn nothing into something. We make a way out of no way. We turn Section 8s into sanctuaries. We nurture nations with empty pantries. We big mama magic the scraps into fine cuisines and food for the soul. They love how we translate our frequencies. It's so jazzy how we rock. We made our blues a sellable sound. We wrapped the king's tongue around our drum. Now everyone wants to be hip. We can orchestra, orient to opuses, from ambient noise and symphony to silence into universes. We be the true image of God, creating life from not existence with just the sound of a voice. And when our children are morphed into martyrs, we turn tragedy into triumph, poverty into prosperity, victims into victors. We don't appropriate, we create. We take the least and make it the most and convince the rest of the world it is worth having. We swim upstream, and we do it with so much suave and swagger that the bear wants to be salmon too. Bought our bodies, commodified our culture, gentrified the sound we found in the Coke can, took everything. But when you are a people powerful enough to turn nothing into something, create something out of nothing, then nothing becomes the only thing you can't do. Hooty hoo.
Hooty hoo.
Oh my God, I didn't expect the applause. Oh my God, the crowd is going wild. Thank you.
The crowd can do many things. The crowd also come in with...
Yes, that's what I'm talking about right there.
That was beautiful, and I love how your whole body is in it. Every part of you is in it. It is physical. It is emotional, elements of alliteration, passion, but also there's cadence, intonation. It just seems like a beautiful dance. It was just a wonder to behold.
So as a spoken word artist or slam poet, which is a competitive form of spoken word, 12, 13 poets will go on stage and 5 random people will be given scorecards, and then they judge the poets. So I have to perform fully and try and entertain with as much as I can in order to get you to listen to the words.
Yeah, I couldn't stop listening as well. I'm going to give you a chance to perform again, and because I have many questions also about your multi. I mean, what don't you do is the question. You're right. You're an entrepreneur. Well, we'll come back to that in a moment. But now you're going to be performing "Dear Poet" from your latest release, which is Black Type Poems, and I did remember to unmute this time, but I almost forgot because it was so
I'm
awesome.
proud of you.
Thanks. I'm proud of myself. But I really got lost in that, and I'm looking forward to getting lost again.
Okay. So if any of you has ever considered writing a poem, or you write poems, if you've ever written poems before, this poem is for you. Dear poet, as much as you make your poems about you, they never will be. They will always be about the effect they have on the reader. Be careful, because you can make the listener the doer of your words. You are the correspondent of this community, so speak truth. And when the Father forces you to function in the favor he's fixed you in, fantastic fortune follows and falls at your feet. Speak And there will be a sea of similes setting at shore out your tongue. The almighty mother of life will move mountains of metaphors out of your mouth in moments you don't even know you're prepared for. You will turn post-traumatic stress disorder into poems that stop death, because poets turn struggle into dreams. Know that PTSD are just more letters for you to ladder your way to possibilities transcending suicide, domestic violence, and people's toxic self-destruction. You will be able to marry Poppins' pain and truth into a spoonful of sugar. People will listen to you even when they built walls along the borders of their heart. You will open doors when you shine your rhymes. Your writing will Harriet Tubman someone to freedom. Your mouth will Michelle Obama someone's backbone. Your experience, your vision, your art, your heart will Oprah Winfrey in front of millions. Your success will Macy Jemison out of this world. Gravity will not contain you, but you will Nikki Giovanni buying your words into books. And after you, Angela Davis, the next revolution, children will speak your name, study your words, and recite your work. But it will never be about you. So don't you dare dim your pen or mute your muse for no man or woman, not the last ex or the next. You are blessed. Purge your pain on page and leave it for the world to learn from your mistakes. You can't beacon in a storm if you hide your light. You don't know what hurricane the reader needs to be sheltered from. Be the warning and the calm after the storm. If life and death is in the power of the tongue, then you brilliant human, are a weaponized wordsmith with a velvet voice. If God spoke the universe into existence, then you are an architect, a construction worker, a bulldozer, a wrecking ball, a jackhammer, a glue gun, a cement mixer, a bricklayer, a needle and thread, a gardener, a god in the earth. And you can manifest anything that you can shape with your mouth, but do not take this power lightly. The tongue is a double-edged sword, more dangerous than Excalibur. The sword of omens, a blazing sword, a spear in the side of a messiah, a fat man, a little boy, a badge and a gun, an infinity gauntlet, or any other fantastic weapon the human mind can manifest, fact or fantasy. But this be a burden. So before you dabble in this art, know that creation is God work. And true poets wield words with the weight of the universe. Now go write something, poet. I dare you.
I'm pressing this to me. Yeah. Wow. Let me tell you, not hoodie me. Wow, that was powerful. That made me want to go and write a poem.
Do
But
it.
I'm just going to focus on my seated soliloquies. But that was beautiful. It was, I mean, I counted about 9 that was just incredible. How do you do it? How do you write it? How do you learn it? How do you deliver it? It's just such a beautiful talent.
The easy part I'll go to. I memorize one line at a time. And actually, if it wasn't for the global pastry, then I probably wouldn't have memorized anything. I'd gone a long time without memorizing, so I've been doing a lot of writing. How I write, I'm not entirely sure how to do it. You know, it's one of my many superpowers. But over time, I've honed my craft. I've listened to other poets. I've watched other poets perform. I've taken in their skills and made them my own. So I just sit down and write with pen. I know one of the things that I do is I take a simple concept or a simple word or a simple sentence and try and make it as complicated as possible. And then I'll take a complicated thought process or a complicated sentence and I'll try and boil it down and make it as simple as possible. And it comes out poetry.
It is magnificent, and you know, it's amazing. I mean, you are a Texas Poet Laureate nominee. I mean, I'm looking at your bio again, National Poetry Slam finalist. I'm very honored and I'm very humbled to have you here with me. And I always feel like a bit of a thief, even though people are watching live and obviously post views. I feel like I have you to myself right now, and that is a gift. that is a priceless gift.
I got to tell you, I'm feeling really special being on the show. I wasn't anticipating how professional of a production this was going to be. So now I kind of feel like somebody right now.
Well, because you're famous, you're very famous, and I am not. No, I appreciate you saying that. You know what? We are both fellow entrepreneurs, figuring it out, supporting one another, collaborating, and discovering and appreciating each other. And we both got the memo about wearing black. So there's that too.
Can't go wrong wearing black.
Well, let me tell you, if you want to find out more about the incredibly famous and wonderful Christopher Michael, first of all, please go and buy his fourth book, Black Type Poems, available. Show it. I'll put it.
Black Type Poems, available 310brownstreet.com or Amazon.
There we go. And you can follow him on all the socials. He's Mr. Michael 310 on Clubhouse, on Twitter, on Instagram. And like me, I think we've decided just to put TikTok onto the back burner, because the world doesn't need another sea shanty sung by Joseph Jaffe or Christopher Michael, right?
No, I'm content with people sending me clips from TikTok. I don't need, it's just one more thing to keep up with. I got too many things going on right now.
And finally, if you want to send him an expression of your gratitude, you can do that through Cash App or Venmo. But most importantly, go and support him, buy his book, download his incredible art, and stay connected. We will be back next Friday. We'll be doing a little reunion show, and hopefully Christopher will be with us as well. Manif, we're going to give you the second last word. He loves your process. And Sunny Asopa said, my favorite poet. And I would have to say mine too.
Oh, thank you. I will do my best to be there at Clubhouse. I will be broadcasting from Panama.
Wonderful. The beautiful, beautiful Panama. We always end up with Chuck Norris, who gets to determine what he thought of tonight's show, of Rahaf Harfouche and Christopher Michael, and you will be pleased to know that he thinks
you are Chuck Norris approved.
There you go. And I will be
put
back
that in my bio.
You better. If you add that, you say, and I was Chuck Norris approved. Bye, everyone. See you tomorrow night.
Hooty hoo.
Hooty hoo.
Thank you for watching the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing with your host, multiple author, and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show, and if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.